I'm going to be giving an overview of our view on money, and in this upcoming series there will be quite a number of people who will be carrying on with this particular view of money, which is an alternative to what is normally taught in economics courses. I think it is closer to what is taught outside of economics, including in history. Let's start with a quiz. I'm going to ask you questions that actually have a correct answer. Okay? These are not matters of theory, ideology, theology, and they are not policy proposals. They are just questions about the way that a sovereign currency works. And by sovereign currency, I mean a currency in which the national government issues its own currency. Okay? Such as the United States, Japan, Turkey. This would not include countries that adopt foreign currencies, and also would not include European nations that adopted the euro. I'll save just one slide on the euro, but you're going to have in the future a whole session devoted to the euro. Okay? So here we go. Just like a household, the government has to finance its spending out of its income or through borrowing. Is that true or false? True. You can write down your answer. Question 2. The role of taxes is to provide finance for government spending. True or false? The national government borrows money from the private sector to finance the budget deficit. True or false? You're going to get a lot of these wrong. By running budget surpluses, the government takes pressure off interest rates because more funds are then available for private sector investment projects. True or false? Persistent budget deficits will burden future generations with inflation and higher taxes. True. Running budget surpluses now will help build up the funds necessary to cope with the aging population in the future. True or false? Okay, you can tally your results. They're all false. Every one of those is false. Recently, there's a paper, St. Louis Fed. Let me read this and then translate it. St. Louis Fed, if you don't know, is a bastion of monetarism. This is Milton Friedman type economics. So what I'm telling you is accepted from right to left. Okay? As the sole manufacturer of dollars whose debt is denominated in dollars, the U.S. government can never become insolvent, i.e. unable to pay its bills. In this sense, the government is not dependent on credit markets to remain operational. Moreover, there will always be a market for U.S. government debt at home because the U.S. government has the only means of creating risk-free dollar-denominated assets. Let me translate. Government can never run out of dollars. It can never be forced to default. It can never be forced to miss a payment. It is never subject to the whims of bond vigilantes. Okay? That's what the St. Louis Fed tells us. And you can find virtually identical quotes from Bernanke, from Greenspan. Okay? And really from almost all economists. When President Obama tells you we're running out of money, that the piggy bank is empty, that is just not true. And all economists know that it's not true. Okay, so the question is, why do they lie to you? There's a nice little video by Blaug in which he interviews Paul Samuelson. I won't read this long thing. You can see the PowerPoint later. He says there's an element of truth in the superstition that the budget must be balanced. He says it all times, but then later on he talks about over longer periods of time. He likens it to an old-fashioned religion used to scare people, okay? So that they will behave in a particular way. He says we have taken away a belief in the intrinsic necessity of balancing the budget, if not every year, then over a short period of time. If Prime Minister Gladstone came back to life, he would say, uh-oh, what have you done? And James Buchanan argues in those terms. I have to say, I see merit in that view. So he likens it to a superstition, an old-time religion. Okay? We have to do this because we have a fear that our elected representatives will spend without limit. And so we make up this lie that the federal government is like a U.S. household. You hear this all the time in the debates about the budget. The U.S. government is like a household. That is not true. Unless you have a printing press in your basement and you're printing up dollars, you are nothing like the federal government. The federal government creates money as it spends. So the framework that I'm working from, called modern money, will use modern money to answer these sorts of questions. What is money? Why is it accepted? What's the relation of the government to its money? What is fiscal policy and what is monetary policy? Almost all the conventional wisdoms that provide answers to these have got it wrong. Okay? Are these things money? The top one is a rock that 500,000 years ago, some humans made scratches in to record something. We don't know what they were recording. Below that, these are bones that are 50,000 years old that humans carved more complicated marks in these to record something. We don't know what they are. Here is some more evidence of things on which humans carved notches or cuneiform. Okay. What are these? We know what these are because we can read them. Okay. Does anyone know what the things on the left are? Tally sticks. Okay. Stock and stub. And we all have heard the term. Raise a tally. So the crown, when he wanted to buy sheep from you, would issue a tally stick to you. You would accept this in payment for the sheep you sold to the king. Okay? And there would be, the stick is split into stock and stub to keep a record. Okay? And the clay Shabbat tablets Michael might be talking about. How about these? Okay, finally you see something, there's money. Okay, what are these? These are records, just like the tally sticks. They're records of credits and debits. And of course today, the currency is fairly insignificant. Most of these records are kept electronically on balance sheets. Okay, so what is money? It's a social unit of account. And in fact, it is almost always a state money of account. In the United States, it's the dollar. Okay? Speak up, really? I sounded loud to myself. It's a record of a debit or credit. The dollar, our money unit, is like an inch, or a foot, or a pound, okay, or a liter. It's a measuring unit. We then have money things that are denominated in our money unit. It's a little bit confusing in the United States because we use the word dollar to indicate both the measuring unit and the thing that's being measured, a little piece of paper that's green. Okay? That has not always been the case in monetary history, but in the United States it is true. We then have a hierarchy of these money things. My professor, Hyman Minsky, used to always say, you know, anybody can create money, and he meant money things. Then he would add, the problem lies in getting it accepted. The government's money things are widely accepted. My money things are much less widely accepted. There is a hierarchy of these money things. The important thing is, almost always the money things are denominated in the state's money of account, dollars. I could issue money things denominated in rays, okay? But it's much more common to denominate them in the state's money of account. What backs up our money? When I started teaching in the early 80s, I would ask my students, and probably 3/4 of economics students said gold. Well, it wasn't true even then, okay? Today, almost nobody is confused about this because we have Ron Paul running around saying, we need to back our money with gold, right? So now they know that it's not. I like to read what it says on the paper currencies. US dollar, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So more sophisticated students will say, it's legal tender. And it's true, many currencies have a statement like that. Canadian dollar, Australian dollar, UK pound. Get out the pound and look at it. It says, Picture the Queen. I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £5 on a £5 note. So in other words, if you take that £5 note to the Queen, she promises to pay you another £5 note. That's all she promises. No gold, no legal tender. She promises to give you another one in exchange. Okay, so, and in Europe, no legal tender laws. So what backs these things up? So some even more sophisticated students say fiat. The government just says it's worth $1. That gets a little bit closer to the truth, but it sounds like there's nothing that backs up the currency. You don't want to look behind the dollar bill, there's nothing there, right? Okay, the alternative view, modern money view. Use of the currency and value of money are based on the power of the issuing authority, not on intrinsic value. That should be fairly obvious now, okay? Where most of our money things are just electronic entries on balance sheets. Even in the case of the government, that's the way that it mostly spends, not by issuing green paper money, but through an electronic entry. The state played the central role in the evolution of money. I think that Michael will talk about this. And from the beginning, used and in fact purposely created the monetary system to move resources to the public sector. That was the purpose of creating a monetary system. We find, as Charles Goodhart says, that in almost every case we have a one nation, one currency. Euroland is the first major experiment in breaking this link between nations and their currencies. It's not going so well for them if you're paying attention to what's going on in Euroland. So separate currencies is not a coincidence. It's tied up with sovereign power, political independence, and fiscal authority. As a shorthand, what we say is taxes drive money. Taxes are denominated in the state's unit of account. The state spends its currency into existence. When you got that tally stick from the crown, why on earth would you sell your sheep to the crown for a stick? Because you could use your half of the stick to pay your taxes. Now, taxes are just one example of an obligation that the authority can put on you. In the old days, fees and fines were much more important than taxes. But today, it's mostly taxes that drive money, but any form of an obligation that you owe the authorities will work to drive a currency. How does a modern government actually spend? Through keystrokes. Okay? When the government wants to buy something or make a transfer payment, Social Security payment, it credits a bank's reserves and the bank credits your demand deposit. All electronically. That's the way modern states spend. So they are spending their own money unit into existence. Taxes just reverse that. The government debits your bank's reserves and the bank debits your account. So it's credits and debits. Okay? And banks are sort of like our scorekeepers. They keep track of these credits and debits for us. When the government credits more accounts than it debits, we call that deficit spending. That's what deficit spending is. The government has created more money than it has debited in tax payments. So the government net credits bank reserves, and the bank net credits the account of the recipient. Okay, why does the government sell bonds? The government can buy anything it wants by crediting bank accounts. Why does it sell bonds? It doesn't need its own money from the population. It creates its own money every time it spends. It never needs to borrow. In fact, if you look at the balance sheets, there is no way that the currency issuer can borrow its own currency. That makes no sense at all. And in fact, it could not be done. So they don't borrow their own currency. Deficit spending leads to net credits to banking system reserves. This will normally lead to excess reserves.